Yeah, so let me give you my definition. So voluntarism is the idea that all relationships between adults need to be voluntary, that nobody gets the ability to use violence or coercion or extortion on anybody else, not even the government. The government doesn't get an exception for morality. And it really is structured around, kind of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have to others do unto you, live and let live, no victim, no crime. And that is, and I hate to say it, it's anarchy rebranded. And
I'm moving house today. It's been 2 years, 8 months and 28 days, and I've got to say that as I step off the bus for what could be the last time spent as sitting in your boss supermarket queues, etc. And I have to say though, it's only today that I'm glad to be leaving. I really will miss the when Santa.
Listening to truthconduit.com with Chris McMillan.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm here we go, Etienne de la Boetie squared. How did I do?
Boetie squared, but you did admirable.
Yeah, I watched your interview with Monica Perez and Brad, and she I kind of copied the way she said it, so I'm not sure. But okay, so you are an organized crime researcher, the founder and executive director of the Art of Liberty Foundation, and the author of this amazing book called Government, the Biggest Scam in History. And I've really been enjoying it. I first heard about it with your interview with James Corbett. That was where I listened to that interview and I said, I'm going to get that book. And I did. I'm going to throw a softball question at you, basically, in your own words. So for people, because I've got a lot of people who watch my my content, who the idea of what my website is about is I think of it as an introductory course to a lot of these topics that might be new to people. So I'm trying to connect. I work on solutions and awareness. And now I'm doing a how-to section as well. I just did a how-to video on how to make aquaponics. I got to get that out there pretty soon. So in your own words, what's the gist of the book? What led you to write it? And what do you hope to accomplish with it?
Well, the gist of the book is, I should probably tell you the subtitle, How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government and the Media. And the thesis is really that government was never intended to protect life, liberty, and property. Government is a technique used by what I call intergenerational organized crime, which I take all the way back to royalty and monarchy. And monarchy is, you're going to give us your money or we're going to hurt you. And when the divine right of kings wasn't selling anymore, they came up with democracy, even though it's immoral and even though it's illogical. And, if you and I can't vote to rob a third person because there's two of us and one of them, then it just doesn't scale, just because there's more people involved. Nothing can take something that's inherently immoral and make it moral just because the mob wants to, lynch black folks or rob Peter to pay Paul. And so government has been a scam. It's been the biggest scam in history, and it is always not legitimate. You can never have a legitimate government because you can't be bound by a social contract you didn't sign. You can't delegate rights that you don't have yourself to, rob your neighbors for charity or, make up rules for everybody to a representative to represent you doing something you don't have the ability to do yourself. And we just, made a mockery of democracy. And so they get away with it because they're controlling the information the population receives through control of the media going back to time immemorial. And also academia. And so the next edition of the book will be how intergenerational organized crime controls the government, the media, and academia, because it really is academia and the media where they're able to force people into the, to control the information they receive first through the mandatory government school. and then through the information that they're getting from this monopoly media system that I, break down in the book. On the old media side, there's 5 or 6 companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion that there's all these different information sources in society. And then on the new media side, the, internet search engines and social media and fact checking this is, Amazon, Wikipedia, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Snopes, Discuss, the comment engine that does comments. It's Meetup, it's Netflix. It's, on the new media side, there's about 2 to 3 dozen what I like to call DARPA front companies, where these companies have been given unlimited capital. They've been given a head start in internet technology. They've been given patents to be able to ensure that they have the dominant platforms. And then all of those, it's not speculation, all of those platforms I just named have been caught censoring content off those platforms. They've been caught demonetizing the alternative media. They've been caught shadow banning. They've been caught kicking people off the platform completely, demonetizing videos, de-indexing certain videos in the search engine, in their search engine capabilities. And so so we've got an organized crime government that goes back to the quote unquote founding of the country, that has been controlling the media, starting with the newspapers and now, up into the internet age, so that nobody is ever exposed to the evidence of the criminality, the evidence that government itself is illogical. They're going to put you into the mandatory government school, where they're going to teach you that it's moral, it's legitimate, it's desirable to have a government, even though there's no, ironclad law of the universe that says you have to have a government. And they're going to do it when you're a kid, before you're old enough to really evaluate the logic and the morality of that claim. And then, as I break down in the book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, they're going to slide it to the population as a pseudo religion, using kind of all the tools and techniques of an unethically manipulative cult or a religion. So, you're going to, we're going to give everybody a flag. It's going to be the artificially indoctrinated holy symbol. You're going to have the holy documents of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You're going to go to the church school, where the priest is going to teach you about the presidents, who are the popes. And we're going to, take you to Washington, D.C. in middle school. And we're going to take you into the cathedral, the Capitol that looks like the Vatican for a reason. And we're going to take you to the temples and show you the deities. And we're going to turn you into a taxpayer who's willing to tithe, turn over, relatively voluntarily, a portion of their income, and obey the commandments of the religion. And then they've got a different, kind of program, the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Explorers, JROTC, ROTC, that is going to, have a kind of different unethically manipulative, techniques to compound that religion. By the time that you get out of that program, that produces an order follower who's willing to set their morality aside and either go abroad and murder people, in the name of the religion, and foreign wars based on lies and manufactured evidence, or they're willing to enforce the edicts, the commandments of this, artificially indoctrinated pseudo religion on their friends and neighbors, and, jail peaceful people for victimless crimes, and tax the population through taxation, through citation. And so that's really what the book has been all about. It's been the most popular book at over a dozen plus Liberty events the past 2 years. And it's a real thousands and thousands of copies to 20 different countries.
That was amazing. That was a beautiful summary. And everything that you just said is summarized in this book with sources. I love the sources that you've put, and the charts and the graphs. It's an easy read. It's the perfect read for to give to somebody, to perhaps leave laying around, on the table for curious young minds. Imagine going to colleges You know, it would be an expensive and risky project, but imagine just going around to universities and leaving this book randomly around in the libraries, in the departments, because naturally it's very visual. And that's the thing. You know, most people are more visual, and, you know, we have been indoctrinated to have a short attention span, myself included, because
Mhm.
of the public education system. So, you know, you've got to adapt. And the fact is, we all have short attention spans, except
Mhm.
for the few lucky people who get to be homeschooled. They're much less likely. So, I love this book, and particularly the way you have graphed these four elements. You've got Nazi Germany, the U.S. government now, the
Mhm.
Soviet Union, Russia, and East Germany, and you've taken each subject and just put it in quadrants, comparing each topic. And anyone could just open that immediately, just see it, like visually. Boom.
So it's funny that you say that. So the book was designed to help wake up friends, family, loved ones. It's scientifically designed. Most people are visual learners. And so I'm using a variety of different techniques in the book to get people to come to that moment of insight because they see the information. They're able to see something that was previously invisible to them, made visible through visualization. Or human beings are really good pattern recognition machines. And when you see that historical pattern, the first part of the book is 20 plus techniques, you know, and then I break down the technique and then I show what that technique looked like in the US, Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and East Germany. And the reader is like, boom, you just nailed it. It's like, once you see it with your own eyes, you recognize that, hey, this is a playbook, that somebody's running a playbook on us, and it was the same playbook that the Nazis and the Soviets and the East Germans used. I mean, they had the Hitler Youth or the Young Pioneers or the Komsomol, or, you know, they had different names, but the playbook, the mandatory, the youth program, the mandatory schools running the Prussian model of education, the control of the use of propaganda, the, you know, use of torture as policy, warrantlessly wiretapping and spying on the populations. All of these are, you know, it's a playbook. This is how we, rule and control society. And you can't help but not, you can't unsee it once you see it. And so the book really is designed, if you've ever tried to explain this to a friend or a loved one and you didn't have any success, you can just hand them this book and then they're hooked. I mean, like, you know, it's so image rich that once you pick it up, you really can't put it down if you just, you know, like thumb through it. It's, you know, one of the reasons it's the best-selling book at, you know, over a dozen plus Liberty events is we'll be exhibiting and I'll just literally hand the book and just hand it to somebody, go just flip through it. And then once people flip through it, they're just hooked and they're like, yeah, shut up and take my money. I mean, it really is, you know, we do amazingly well versus, you know, every other book out there.
Do you know what the difference? You've probably heard this joke. The difference between the government and the mafia is?
The mafia doesn't have a 12,000 hour indoctrination program to make you think it's legitimate.
That's it.
No, and so that's it. And so how do you break through that conditioning? You know, and so what we're doing is we're exposing how the magician does the trick. And then once you can expose to somebody how the magician does the trick, well, nobody likes to be a chump. And so people get, you would be, you know, surprised how people get visibly upset, you know, when they're flipping through the book, when they realize, hey, I've been conned, I've been scammed here. And then they get, you know, they get angry. And so that's what I'm trying to achieve. People, like, another kind of interesting stat is we just ran some numbers and I mentioned we sold thousands and thousands of copies, you know, over the past, couple of months or 4 months, and to 20 countries. And over 110 of those are buying what we call friends bundles of 5 copies or 10 copies to give away to friends. People send me pictures, where they're putting them in little mini libraries in their neighborhood, putting them in the real library in their community. They're leaving them as coffee table books on their Airbnbs, and then calling me and telling me the funny story of the ex-police officer who was staying at the Airbnb and it blew his mind, or, you know, all these great, you know, stories of what happens when you just leave this book out for, the unsuspecting to really, get their mind blown.
In Texas, where I live, you've got me thinking, I know a few professional people who have an office who
Mhm.
would be willing to have this book in their waiting room. Not many, but personally, I know an eye doctor, I know a chiropractor, and I know a holistic dentist who would be willing to put that in their waiting room. There was this
Last week, real quick, last week, somebody bought 10 copies from Australia. And in the note where you can send us a note over the website, she said that she'd found it in a coffee shop where a guy, and she mentioned the guy's name, and, like he'd left it as the coffee table book in his coffee shop in Australia. And then she bought 10 copies, but she, it just caught her attention, and boom, now she's probably going to be putting it in 10 different new coffee shops. So that's the dynamic that's going on, and that's how we're going to wake up this country.
Yeah, Australia's they're getting the full brunt, the full force of it right now.
Yep.
So it makes me wonder, you hear all these stories, but then what is the reality of the situation? And I don't know unless you know people there with like, they're living there going through it. It's hard to tell because I have been wrong a few times. My perception of what I'm seeing on the news versus the reality of what the people are doing and saying, and it goes vice versa. I've had people talking to us going, "Oh God, Texas is under lockdown. Oh, it must be horrible there." And we're like, "Not where I live."
Mhm. Yeah.
Where we live, man. Yeah, okay. Technically, there's a mask mandate and there's a lockdown, but people, you just do not comply. Massive non-compliance
Yep.
is one of the many solutions going forward.
Well, Chris, I understand in China, people are dropping dead of the COVID in the street. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, this is, it gets to the, the kind of the thesis of the book. It's the government and the media working together, and they do illusion, man. They do illusion. I mean, they can make you believe there's an island in the Pacific with dinosaurs that chase, tourists and jeeps. I mean, like, if you don't understand how the magician does the trick, they can use the television to make you believe that there's a pandemic, that there's a rash of school shootings, that there is, that there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, that there's Kuwaiti babies being tossed out of incubators. If you don't understand that they're willing to lie to you to your face, bold, abject lie, stage, crowds of people like lined up, in front of hospitals or whatever. And then the next day, independent journalists go and there's no lines in front of the hospital. You're not even in the game if you don't understand the level of media deception that we've been under, for decades. And I really think War of the Worlds, they figured out we can tell the people there's an alien invasion over the radio, and they'll believe it. They'll, like, we're controlling the information that they receive. And as long as we're controlling the information that we receive, and we're so amoral and so crooked that we're willing to deceive them, that we can deceive them in ways that will make us trillions of dollars. And that's our thesis of like what happened in the COVID is it's the engineered manufactured reason to hand trillions of dollars to private banks and private companies through the bailouts and the stimulus. So it's a bank robbery. We spent billions with our monopoly media system to convince the world that there's a pandemic so we can make trillions in bailouts and stimulus while the people get, little crappy chicken feed stimmy checks. But take a look at at the banks and the companies that are making trillions off of the bailouts and the stimulus. Take a look at the treasury market that was starting to melt down, right before COVID happened. And then, lo and behold, now the Fed gets to participate in the treasury market where it was forbidden by the Federal Reserve Act. And so that's the real reason for the COVID. I think people weren't coming to the treasury markets. We're getting robbed. It is, but if you're stealing trillions of dollars and bailouts and and stimulus and military industrial complex fraud and vaccines, mandatory vaccines that people don't want and being forced to take to have their kids go to school, or being forced to take for an imaginary pandemic that is obviously not what people told us. It's obviously not the lethality. It's obviously not the communicability that they've told us it was. They're obviously rigging the tests. If you don't understand and you can't just fathom it in your mind that they're willing to lie to you into your face, like they've been caught doing over and over again, from the Gulf of Tonkin to Kuwaiti babies tossed out of incubators to, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I mean, they're willing to murder people in wars based on lies and manufactured intelligence. And you don't think they're going to fake a pandemic? Come on, grow up.
My mind has just gone blank, and I'm sitting there. Who wrote War of the Worlds? My mind's just gone blank.
Was it Wells?
Yeah,
H.G. Wells?
yes, H.G. Wells. He was one of the bad guys. I would put him up. All of his work. He was like a Fabian socialist, and
Yep.
he was part of the club. And yeah, when you mentioned War of the Worlds, that probably was his that probably was a test for them to see how that would pan out. I'm sure there's been, I'm speculating here, other smaller tests over the centuries of how people would respond to this, but yeah, H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds.
And it wasn't just Wells, so Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, he was also Fabian socialist and kind of in the organized crime club.
Yeah,
and
the whole Huxley family, they were definitely part of the club.
Yeah, and George Orwell, who wrote 1984, was a propagandist for the BBC. And so I think that these are, what I would call like a future visioning document, where this is this way, or we can kind of take it that way, and then they vote on it, and then they figure out, now we will circulate it among the co-conspirators as a piece of fiction, so that if we get caught, we can say, oh, that's just a story, that's just a novel somebody wrote. But then they end up making it happen. And the latest version of that is the Rockefeller Foundation's lockstep program, which was the future planning document for the COVID. So they did just like they did, 1984 and Brave New World, they had a, kind of a future visioning document for the COVID that came out in 2010 called Lockstep, which was still on the Rockefeller Foundation's website not too long ago. It may be gone, but I'm sure you can find it out there on the internet.
I've got a copy of it anyway.
I've got a copy saved as well, but it's like, this is the direction that we want to take the planet. And then, okay, we're going to vote on it, or, this is, get ready for it, or, this is what it's going to look like. And then oh no, we're, just the fact that all of that came true is just a complete accident. It has nothing to do with the fact that they, wrote it down and planned it out.
Yeah.
So.
And of course, right up at the beginning, the event 201 was the most obvious one. That went on. Everybody said, "Wait a minute!" But then Lockstep was another one. The Lockstep was part. It was one of the many scenarios that they. And what we're kind of coming to realize is it doesn't have to be one scenario or the other, or not the other one. It seems like there was also a scenario about cyber attack. Hack attack. I can't remember which one that was. So, and obviously that is starting to ramp up as well. I've got another joke for you.
Hit me.
What's the difference between a libertarian and a voluntarist?
6 months?
Yeah. So I do want to, if you get a chance, I do want to know your transition from libertarian to becoming a voluntarist. And some people listening may not have heard of voluntarism. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so let me give you my definition. So voluntarism is the idea that all relationships between adults need to be voluntary, that nobody gets the ability to use violence or coercion or extortion on anybody else, not even the government. The government doesn't get an exception for morality. And it really is structured around, kind of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have to others do unto you, live and let live, no victim, no crime. and that is, and I hate to say it, it's anarchy rebranded. And and
see my T-shirt today. I'm wearing.
I did
Derek,
holistic anarchism,
Derek's T-shirt.
And so I break down in the book. I actually break down and show how they change the word anarchy. Anarchy, they want to keep everybody away from anarchy because it's the only thing that's fair for everybody, and it's the only political philosophy that exposes the immorality and illogic of government kind of on its face. And so, for those that aren't in the know yet, anarchy doesn't mean no rules. Anarchy means no rulers. But the rulers don't want you to know that there's an option on the menu called no rulers, because if it was between rulers and no rulers, you may choose no rulers. And so they've used their media propaganda system that we detail in the book, and they've used the control of the dictionary, which I break down in great detail in one of the one-pagers in the book, to change the word over time and actually compare the 1827 definition of anarchy from Webster's dictionary with the modern definition of anarchy from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, so that you can see how they've changed it over time to mean chaos and dystopia, to throw people off the track of the one thing that would free them and save them and would be fair for everybody and would unleash the capital creation mechanisms of the market and the invisible hand of the market, and would really, free, lead to real freedom. And so they want to associate anarchy with everything from violence to communism, when it has absolutely nothing to do with either. And it's a political philosophy of peace. It's based on the non-aggression principle, that any act of aggression, anytime you see somebody using violence, on anybody else except in self-defense, that's how you tell they're the bad people. And then that exposes the inherent illegitimacy and immorality of the government's monopoly, police, etc., because they're the ones that are using violence on peaceful people, either to try and mold society in the way some politician thinks it should be, or to raise revenue on their friends and neighbors through what Sheriff Mack calls taxation through citation. And so that really is the big secret is we don't need government. We don't need government at all. Everything the government does, whether it be dispute resolution or armed protective services or air traffic control or roads or whatever, anything that's non-distributive, there you go. That's the book. By the way, so the answer to your question is that's the book that got me over the goal line. And we sell that book.
Me too, man.
You sell it too? Oh, it got you over the goal line.
Yeah,
we sell that at government-scam.com, and we cut people a deal. They can get the book. They can get Larkin's book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. They can get my book, and they can get a Liberator flash drive at a discount if they buy the bundle at government-scam.com. That is the second best-selling book on the website next to mine. We've sold hundreds and hundreds of copies of The Most Dangerous Superstition all around the world. And so that is, and your joke about, what's the difference between a libertarian and a voluntarist. So I think, we were talking right before the show, I just got off the conference circuit where I've been to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I've been to Freedom Fest. I've been to the Squatch Fest in the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to all these festivals, and voluntarism is slowly and surely winning the day. And there is a full-on voluntarist renaissance. People are figuring out that they've been scammed and they've been scared away from a term that means real freedom. And people are we're slowly winning. The Free State Project is slowly turning voluntarist. Period. End of story. I think the Libertarian Party is slowly turning, voluntarist, and there's memes out there that what happens, I think it's it's got like Ron Paul, and he's like, what happens when all your supporters figure out the government is illegitimate in the first place? And, so that dynamic is a revolution that's only going in one direction, because once you realize that the government is illegitimate, that you can't have a legitimate government, it's absolutely impossible to have a moral, legitimate, logical government. And once you realize that there's a man behind the curtain in the monopoly media and the all these DARPA front companies, boom, that's it. You never go back to believe in the TV. You never go back to believe in the elections, or or wasting your time in a rigged poker game. It is a revolution that is only going in one direction, and like that is, and I think that's how we're going to win.
Yeah, once you wake up from the matrix and take the metaphorical red pill, there is no going back. I say that, but actually, recently we've come up with another metaphor, and that is to eat the steak. It has nothing to do with meat eating habits. I love, meat eaters. But do you remember that scene in The Matrix where the guy who betrayed them, he was having a meeting with Mr. Smith, and he goes, I know this steak isn't real, but I don't want to remember anything. So that was another metaphor, because sometimes people who do have their act together decide they don't care anymore and they just get back into the system. Very rarely. I think I've only seen it twice, but that's kind of been a joke in autonomy is, oh no, she's eating the steak. She's choosing the steak.
You know what I see? I tell you what I see that's really sad is, I go to a lot of these, conferences and events, and I see the controlled opposition media. I see this media system that is only interviewing itself. You know what I mean? And is trying to pretend that the elections are legitimate, and that and you just watch some of these without naming names, Epic Times. I'm just like watching the Epic Times interview people and try and keep them in the fake left right paradigm and everything, and it's just and it's not just some they're especially like Freedom Fest was especially bad, even though at least 30-40, maybe as much as 40% of the crowd was self-described anarcho-capitalists, and that's who came by our booth. I'd say that that probably 40% of the crowd were Republicans. I would say that 30% of the crowd were libertarians, and then I'd say 30% of the crowd were somewhere around anarcho-capitalist, a voluntarist, anarchist. And there's graduations in between, but like we're slowly winning Freedom Fest over. Like I was watching that dynamic happen. I've been to other Freedoms Fest, and it didn't seem like there was the same percentage the last time that I went. And so we're winning, and it's kind of funny to sit on the sidelines and watch these controlled opposition mouthpieces pretend that the elections are legitimate and try and keep everybody in this fake left-right paradigm of Trump versus Biden. And it's sad when you see it up close and personal.
It's classic divide and conquer. It really is. What is the Art of Liberty Foundation all about?
So the Art of Liberty Foundation is our nonprofit, and the book Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed is one of our publications. But I'm trying to start a think tank that would be voluntarist in nature. So, something like a Cato or like a Heritage or like a Brookings, but would be, would come at the problem, number one, from the voluntarist standpoint of government is always illegitimate. You can't have a legitimate government. It's not logical. It's not moral. There's no way to delegate rights you don't have yourself. You can't be bound by a social contract you didn't sign. Democracy is two wolves and sheep deciding what's for dinner, and would look at would study our political situation from the standpoint that this is intergenerational organized crime, controlling perception through the monopolization of the media and these DARPA front companies that are algorithmically censoring news and information, and really follow the money. Where are these trillions of dollars going? And then ultimately maybe claw some of it back, but definitely expose it as intergenerational organized crime. And so one of the things that we're doing that's different from the other think tanks and public policy organizations out there is we're calling it organized crime, intergenerational organized crime, versus what I believe to be purposefully unhelpful and purposefully undescriptive terms like globalists or elitists or deep state or new world order. The Department of Justice doesn't have a division of doing something about the deep state, but if you call it intergenerational organized crime, all of a sudden then there's an expectation that they should look into this and do something about it. And where are all these trillions going? Where are the trillions missing from the Pentagon? Where are the billions of dollars missing from the post office? Where are the billions of dollars missing from Amtrak? Where's the Social Security is actuarially, untenable? When are you going to tell the people that it's actuarially untenable? What's going on? I don't know if there's a file cabinet at a Social Security office in West Virginia that when the government has a surplus, they've been taking that surplus, they've been stealing it from the Social Security lockbox and trust fund, and they've been loaning it to the government where it's handed out the back door, and no bid contracts for military equipment we don't need, or vaccines, or whatever, the scam of the day is. And then they just, on a laser printer in West Virginia, print out a bond. And this bond is unlike a corporate bond that's tied to a profitable business with a revenue stream. The bond is just an IOU to the government from the government. And the only way that they're going to be able to redeem these bonds, and the last time that I checked, and this was almost a decade ago, there was $2.9 trillion in these worthless IOU bonds. The only way they're going to be able to redeem it is if they raise taxes, if they cut spending, or they do some combination of the two, which is the exact options that they would have if there wasn't a bond in the first place. It's ridiculous. We're being robbed. Emergency, we're being robbed. And that filing cabinet is going to bust open at the end of the movie like the briefcase from Dumb and Dumber, and people are going to be going, man, maybe we should have paid attention, once the government was like $1 trillion in debt, or 2 trillion, and like, it's ridiculous. It's just, I can't believe that the population has allowed itself to be, to raped, robbed, and mulched to this extent.
And again, it goes back to public schooling. I blame, I was public schooled, and I'm going to be spending the rest of my life trying to undo the damage done there. I know a few people who are older, like adults, who did not go to school, and they think differently. They're able to see things a lot more clearly than someone like myself, who would have to struggle to see the truth to get through it. Eventually I'll get there. Again, you've quoted a lot, and he's very influential on myself as well, the works of John Taylor Gatto, which I always recommend anytime anyone mentions education, the problem with the schooling system or homeschooling. Ironically, he's if you want the history of public education, it's John Taylor Gatto. So I was really happy to see you had plenty of references to him in your book as well. I suppose you went to public school, didn't you?
I like to call it government school. And
Yeah.
yes, I am the victim of a bad government education.
Yeah.
But I have, I like yourself have taken it upon myself to self-educate. I read voluminously. I'm a lifelong learner. I've tried to, correct some of the damage by developing the skills and the habits of the right way to learn and the right way to, understand information, to look at logic, and to be able to understand logical fallacies, so that you've got a firewall in the mind, so that when information comes in, you can because information is either going to be used as a weapon against you, or it's going to be how you're going to be able to discern fact from fiction. And if you don't have the tools to do that, then it's going to be used as a weapon against you. And so understanding logic, understanding logical fallacies, being able to tell when something is empirically true or not. Those are things that I had to go learn myself, because the government school system is not going to teach those to you on purpose, because they want to use language against you later on in your life.
Yeah, when one of the many things that Richard Grove has taught me in autonomy is all about learned helplessness,
Yeah.
and so nowadays when I'm experiencing it, I recognize it at least. Okay, I may not overcome it or solve the problem, but at least, when it comes to numbers, for example, in math, I'm like, learn helplessness alert. Okay, calm down. And another one is the scarcity mentality. These kind of things that are embedded in us. Just takes work to undo all the damage that was done. When did you graduate? Where'd you go to school?
So I graduated high school in '88 and then went to the University of Memphis. I'm a college dropout. I dropped out to start my first company. I'm an entrepreneur. By the way, I'm a huge fan of the autonomy program as well. And I was a guest lecturer in season 1.
Yeah, I don't know if I caught that lecture. I'm ashamed to say. I caught most of the lectures, but it's a
Mhm.
shame I missed that. But like I said, I'm glad that we have connected. But better late than never. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The um, the Art of Liberty Foundation. You're working on 2 projects, from what I understand right now: Eternal Vigilance and the Thick Red Line. Do you want to go into what those are about?
Well, I'll tell you what, we can go into the thick red line and what I call the pre-state project. The pre-state project. So the other thing we're working on is how do you win the whole thing? How do you widely expose this organized crime system in an era of monopoly media and algorithmic censorship on the DARPA internet? And so what our strategy is we call it the pre-state project. And for those that are not familiar with the free state project, the free state project is an effort by libertarians and voluntarists in New Hampshire to concentrate their numbers in a single state with a low sub 1.5 million population to where they can affect change and roll back government to just protecting life, liberty, and property. That's the Free State Project. The pre-state project, and a pre-stater in New Hampshire is somebody that supports the goals of the Free State Project but already lives in New Hampshire. And so right now in New Hampshire, there's about 5,000 plus libertarians and voluntarists that are on the ground. About 2,000 plus of them have moved to New Hampshire, and there's about 3,000 or so pre-staters that already live in New Hampshire but support the goals of the Free State Project. There's another 20,000 that have pledged to move to New Hampshire, and more arrive every single day. And they are rolling back laws. They are getting libertarians elected to the legislature. They are changing the political landscape in New Hampshire, and they are slowly but surely winning. And so what we want to do is we want to accelerate it. We want to accelerate the Free State Project by widely exposing the illegitimacy and criminality of government in a single state by getting around the algorithmic censorship of the internet and the monopolization of the media and go door to door. It is a brute force attack on censorship. We want to drop copies of the book. So the book was actually designed to be dropped off at somebody's house so that when they pick it up, they're hooked and they're like, oh my God, I didn't understand this was going on, kind of a thing. And so we want to drop off at a minimum for $1 million. We could drop off 100,000 copies of the book, 100,000 copies of our flash drive, credit card size flash drive that backs up all the evidence of the book, and a documentary in 12 different communities in New Hampshire backed up by 36 in-person meetings. So $1 million gets you 100,000 packages. And then those packages drive people to in-person events where we answer all their questions. So they get, a package on the door that says, hey, emergency. We hate to, break it to you, but the government has been hijacked by organized crime. They have been lying to the population. They've been, robbing the population. They've been getting away with it because they've been in on it with the media. Here's all of the evidence. We're having a town hall meeting in your community to discuss what's going on, answer any of your questions. This is, we're not kidding. And then, when they go to the meeting, you've got world-class speakers that, just answer all their questions, introduce them to their neighbors that are already in the know, and then into all of the political and social networks that already exist in the state. Right now, the Free State Project has over 550 meetups a year. They've got different organizations that do everything from rate the legislation that comes before the House in New Hampshire on, is it pro-liberty or is it anti-liberty? They've got organizations that are getting libertarians elected. They've got groups that are working on homeschooling, on scholarships. They've got groups that are doing putting little mini libraries of liberty into laundromats. So whatever your interest is, we want to steer those people into the freedom network that already exists on the ground in New Hampshire. And the goal is to win a single state. Let's just widely expose this in a single state. It may cost $1 million, but we'll get $100 million in free publicity. And once people realize what's going on in New Hampshire, that government is, and the criminality of Washington, D.C. is being exposed widely, house to house, door to door in New Hampshire, you can't hide it from the rest of the country. You can't hide it from the rest of the world. And if we can get either a secession from the federal government, or we can get enough peaceful civil disobedience, Martin Luther King, civil disobedience, where we're not paying our taxes, we're not withholding taxes for our employees, we're not listening to the government, anymore. We're not, we're laughing at the government order followers. We're laughing at the people that are working for the government because we know they've been conned. We know they've been chumped. We know how the game is played. We understand how the scam works. Then that's the way you win a single state. And then that would give libertarians around the world a redoubt. That would give them a place to go where they don't have to worry about the order followers, where the order followers have no power because they just get laughed at. They're like, you got tricked, you got chumped. They put you through an unethically manipulative program. You're wearing a costume. They made you shave your head. They made you shave your head. And so that's how we win, by exposing how the magician does the trick widely in a single state that can't be ignored by the rest of the country. It's relatively low cost compared to other, solutions for liberty. And, it's never been tried before, but that's our major project. The other project is the Thick Red Line Project, which is helping the police say no to victimless crimes, to politicians on victims' crimes, supporting the police to say no to politicians if there isn't really a victim. Right now, the politicians frequently are trying to force the police to use violence on peaceful people for lockdowns, mask mandates, red flag laws, and other quote unquote victimless crimes where the state is supposedly the victim, but you can't get a fair trial because the judge works for the state, the prosecutor works for the state, and the witness against you, the police officer, all work for the state. And these aren't really crimes at all. And a lot of the police don't want to be going along with it, but they get fired if they say no one at a time. And so what we're doing is working with the Thick Red Line Project at thickredline.org to support the police and individual communities to say no to politicians on victimless crime. If there's not a crime, if there's not a victim, it's not a crime. And if the police say no collectively, supported by the community, there's nothing that the politicians can do to make them. We're giving the police the ability to nullify bad laws themselves, which they've already had, but most of them didn't know that they had the ability to do it. But what we're doing is we're, creating community support where the community is saying, hey, We don't want you enforcing victimless crimes. We support you to say no. We're encouraging you to say no. We're telling you to say no. And we're telling you that we're not going along with victimless crimes anymore. And so that's the two major projects that we're working on. And you can get more information at
Art of
government,
Liberty Foundation.
well, government-scam.com/foundation.
The order followers, I mean, that's where the rubber hits the road. That is the reality. When, I mean, imagine if every soldier and every cop in the world just said no, then the parasites would be literally powerless. That's why, again, it all comes back to education. They depend so much on processing these people to follow orders. That is brilliant. The thick red line, yeah, that, and the sheriff is a big part. I mean, I know I've learned from Sheriff Mack, the sheriff is they still have a lot of power in the small precincts and counties, don't they? I mean, I heard stories like when there was a mask mandate, the sheriff would make an announcement, I'm not going to enforce it. And that was encouraging when things like that were happening. But I wanted to ask you about back to the pre-state project. $1 million is your goal, so you're raising it at the foundation. Is that right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. Like, how is this? Like, where do we stand time wise? Like, how is it? The momentum looking, and how realistic is it looking? And when do you think this could actually start to happen?
So it's funny. So the book really took off in March of this year, and then I had to deal with thousands and thousands of orders from 20 plus different countries. And that took an amazing amount of my time. Then we embarked on what I call conference season, where we went to all these different events. I just got back. I've been back 4 days after being in 30 states in 3 months. And so I do that because, going to these events like Freedom Fest, like the Porcupine Freedom Festival, is really the only way I can be assured to get around the algorithmic censorship of the internet and the monopolization of the media, to be able to get the book out widely into the hands of diverse groups of people that I would not have been able to reach in any other way. And so I'm about to, I'm going to one more. I'll be at the Jackalope Freedom Festival, August 1st through August 11th or August 10th. And then I'm back in the office, and then I'm going to pick up trying to get this thing funded in a kind of a more serious manner than I've been able to do, being on the road 30 different states in 3 months. And so I haven't had a chance to kick it off like I'd planned, because earlier this year we just got inundated by orders for the book from all around the world, and I had to kind of deal with that. It's a good problem to have, but it's a problem nevertheless.
I just thought of another great problem to have is on the Free State Project. Imagine when that starts happening, when all of the people who just want to be free start flocking to New Hampshire, then you're going to run out of space. But that would be a great problem to have because I imagine if every person on the planet who understood the things that we understand, or even did not, but just know something's wrong and want to be free, were in New Hampshire, there wouldn't be enough space.
Well, I think what's going to happen is I actually think it's going to go a little bit the way that marijuana legalization went, after Colorado legalized, other states began, following one right after another like dominoes. And once you widely expose the illegitimacy and the criminality of the government, and how the monopolization of the media and the algorithmic censorship of the internet has been working and widely in a single state, it's going to get out. And so right after New Hampshire falls, there goes Wyoming, there goes Idaho.
I hope Texas is on that list, but I don't know, man. We've got a lot of people flocking here from California, New York. But I have met quite a few Californians who thought freedom was a good thing. They were not collectivists. They were for individual freedom. So I see a California license plate. I'm driving around. I try not to judge, but at the same time, I'm like, man, what is going on? you know?
So I use those states because they have relatively low populations and they've already got a concentrated number of pro freedom people. For $1 million isn't that much money, and so once you prove the model and you prove that, hey, you can get around the monopolization of the media and the algorithmic censorship of the internet by going door to door in a single state, then boom. I mean, there's somebody in my, like, let's go do it in Montana. Let's go do it in Wyoming. Let's go start with the other states where it's going to be relatively, cost effective to do it. And that's a model that we can just accelerate state by state by state. And again, it's a revolution that only is going in one direction. Once people realize how the magician has been doing the trick, and the fact that government has been illegitimate from the get-go, and they've been controlling perception through mandatory government schools and this monopoly media system, then boom, it's all over. I mean, it is going to go quick. And so I'd like to see Texas. I'm a misplaced Texan myself. Fort Worth represent, and so I'd love to see Texas secede, and I'd love to do it in Texas. The cost is more in Texas because you just got to reach more people. There's more cities. There's more. It's not as easy as doing it one of these low population states, but $1 million in Texas. There's a bunch of people. I have a feeling there's a bunch of people in Texas that they got that in their couch. And so, we'll see what we can do, but, we'll see what we can do.
I mean, what would be some books that you would recommend that were very influential for you, that someone reading who wants to learn more about this? What were some influential books for you? What would you recommend?
So I mentioned that we back up everything in government, the biggest scam in history, with a credit card sized flash drive that we call the Liberator. And the Liberator is full of books on PDF and short videos and documentaries and truth memes and everything that you can imagine. And some of the books that are on the Liberator are Murray Rothbard for New Liberty, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, which exposed how Wall Street was behind creating communism in Russia to test a kind of more authoritarian version of government. So they're running government on the population here in the United States. But it's a version where the people think that they have rights and they've got private property and they've got guns and things like that. And we don't necessarily want that kind of government. We want to rule them with this other kind of government. So we'll kind of beta test communism over here as a way of, running government on them where they don't think that they have any rights. They can't own any property. They can't own anything. And then that would be a, kind of more effective form of slavery than the tax slavery in the West. And so that was an important book. Major Jordan's Diaries was a really, really important book. And that was another book exposing the collaboration between the United States and the Soviet Union, where the United States was propping up the Soviet Union. Major Racy Jordan was a Lend-Lease officer that was in charge of ferrying planes and equipment that the United States was giving to the Soviet Union during World War II, and after we were shipping them everything from printing plates to make the occupation script in that was being used in Europe. And he documents all that in Major Jordan's Diaries.
Here's one.
Chaos Theory. I just read Chaos Theory. The Creature from Jekyll Island, another one. Great book exposing the fraud of central banking and who was behind the creation of the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve Act. Fantastic book. But there's a whole bunch that you can download for free at government-scam/Liberator, where you can download all the contents of the Liberator for free, including all of our favorite books on PDF. And if you download the whole Liberator, you can actually get the PDF version of Government, the Biggest Scam in History, exposed in PDF where you can click through to all the links. I will tell you, if you're trying to wake somebody up, I give the book away for free. But if you really want to wake somebody up, you got to give them a hard copy. Once they pick it up, it's, they're not going to put it down, versus if you just email it to them, it might get deleted. It might not get opened, whatever. But the second they pick it up, they're going to be hooked. Yeah.
Yeah. This one here. This is it right here. I will in post edit, I can put B-roll of relative pages and things we were talking about.
Oh, perfect.
But yeah, I've been mostly in gallery view. But right now I've got it on speaker view so people can actually look and see. There it is. Yep. Trying to get it just right. Yeah, it's an excellent book. Great suggestions. Yeah, here we've got politics, philosophy right here, and then we've got education, John Taylor Gatto, and everything wrong with the central banking system right there. That's that's 3 pillars right there. I feel very safe here in this space.
Yeah. And I'd put Gatto up there as well. Gatto was very influential. Absolutely. Very influential.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, and really have a great time at Jackalope, man. It's going to be crazy out there in the desert. I suppose you've been before.
I had. This is going to be my second one.
Yeah. What you are doing is incredible. And I really appreciate guys like you getting out there and making the whole circuit. Who else? Ernie Hancock. He's a maniac too. He's
the sheriff of Jackalope.
Oh my God. Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting him in his studio a couple of years ago in Phoenix. He's a character. He works. He's like you. You guys getting out there, getting after it. Do you have anything else you want to add or wrap up or say before we wrap up?
No, government-scam.com/foundation if you want to learn about what we're trying to do. And even if you can't help, if you could just steer us to somebody you can. And I would just encourage everybody to get copies for your friends and your relatives. And we're just we're waking people up, unlocking minds one at a time, and it's going along swimmingly.
Walking down the street, the children play. For them, it's just another day. The future's reflected in their parents' faces, who chose to stay on in this place where they were born, went to school, got married, and kids, like their grandparents before them did. Got to escape, before it's too late. Although today I could say that I really will miss the when Santa. Yeah, that's right. Knew what it was like when Santa.
You've been listening to truthconduit.com with Chris McMillan. Go to the subscribe page and sign up to get notifications of the latest posts. And check out the support page to help keep it going.
Yeah, I've got a friend in Jesus Christ. I've got a friend in Jesus Christ, and Krishna and Buddha and my bartender.
Have you found that your skills aren't matching up with the challenges ahead? Here are 19 essential skills for success that school never taught you. Get your free copy by following the link below or visit getautonomy.info/19skills.